Hey there, friends. It's Sarah here from the Nest in the West, and today we're talking all about caring for your pregnant dairy goats from breeding season all the way through the last few days of their gestation. Now, caring for your goats while they're pregnant is actually not as complicated as you might think. It's actually pretty simple, but there are a few important ways that I like to set my does up for success when it comes to kidding and coming back into milk. If we haven't met before, I'm Sarah. I'm a homeschool mom to 4 kids. I'm a flower farmer, and I also teach goat milk cheese making in my online course, Goat Cheese Academy. I've been keeping dairy goats for 8 years now, and so we've had plenty of kids born on the homestead. Over the years, I've learned a lot about how to care for our goats through breeding, birth, and postpartum, and the best ways to support them during their gestation. So here on our homestead, we are about 1 month out from the first kidding dates for my 5 dairy does. It's a beautiful time of year here. Early February is really the start of spring in the low desert, and the flowers are just about ready to come into bloom. The mama goats are starting to look big, and we're starting to have our bets about how many babies they're each holding on to in there. It's been really nice to have this rest from milking and from all the flowers coming in and just enjoy the sweetness of this winter season. But now we're all starting to get really excited, looking forward to new baby goats on the homestead and all the joys that spring brings. Now, as I mentioned before, it's actually really pretty simple caring for pregnant dairy goats. So why bother making a video about it? Well, for starters, I think a lot of new goat owners worry about this. I mean, when you think about a human pregnancy, there's a lot of ways that we treat ourselves differently when we're pregnant. And so it's reasonable to think that maybe goats might be the same way. But I can happily assure you that goats are very much built for this. They don't slow down a lot during their pregnancy. They act more or less the same, and a lot of their needs are actually pretty similar to how they are when they're in milk. In the wild, you can expect animals like goats to be pregnant every single year and kidding every spring. And so that actually is the healthiest thing for your dairy goats as well. If you were not already feeding your goats alfalfa hay or pellets, now is a really good time to start. Alfalfa is rich in calcium, it's high in protein, and it has a lot of great minerals and energy support for your goats through pregnancy and especially as they begin to come into milk. So if you haven't already been feeding your goat alfalfa, if she's pregnant, now is a really great time to start. The other really important needs, like I said, are pretty similar to when she is in milk or even when you're raising a young dairy doe. She's gonna need plenty of fresh water, a high quality free choice mineral or mineral buffet, and you're gonna wanna make sure that she gets fresh air and sunshine and all the things that are important that goats need to be happy and healthy. Goats don't seem to really experience morning sickness and their activity levels remain the same. Towards the end of their pregnancy, you'll see they start to slow down a little bit, and you might catch them laying down in the sunshine a little bit more than previously. But on the whole, their energy levels and the amount of exercise that they're getting should remain the same. Now, a goat's gestation is anywhere between 145 days and 150 on average, depending on the breed. It's really important that does have a dry period before they kid again. Their bodies require this time to replenish their reserves of calcium and fat, minerals, and to just give their body a rest before jumping right back into the full swing of milk production again. This dry period also allows their bodies to shift their energy from milk production to the last couple months of growing healthy, strong kids. Goats that are given a break like this tend to deliver stronger, healthier kids and typically experience better health and milk production in their lactation following as well. Here on our farm, we like to give about 8 weeks of rest between drying our goats off and when they kid again. If you are curious about how we dry our dairy goats off, I actually have a video on the topic and I'll link it up here. Now, if you live in a selenium deficient area, you're going to want to consider how you will make sure that your goat is getting enough selenium in her pregnancy. Selenium is a really important mineral for goats, but especially when it comes to fertility, growing healthy kids, and maintaining their own health. So we had one bad year on our farm where we didn't realize we had a pretty severe selenium deficiency, even though I was giving a quality mineral. It turns out we live in a pretty selenium deficient area. And so unbeknownst to me, our goats had a severe selenium deficiency. And the way that manifested was in a couple of stillbirths, some weak kids that required some extra help to get them suckling and standing on their own after birth. And then even one of our does experienced some muscle weakness in her legs. Overall, it was a challenging time, but I was actually really grateful for the overwhelming evidence as to what the problem was, because the great thing about a selenium deficiency is that once you remedy the problem, the goats tend to recover pretty quickly. Now, of course, we couldn't do anything about the stillborn kids, and that was a really big bummer. But we were able to give shots of selenium and vitamin E to the affected does and kids, and pretty quickly they were back on their feet, quite literally, and doing so much better. Nowadays, we offer a full mineral buffet to our goats, and we always have out free choice selenium to make sure that they're getting what they need. If you're not offering free choice selenium and you know you're in a selenium deficient area, you may want to consider giving your pregnant does a shot of Bo-C. It's a vitamin E and selenium injection. And so you administer the correct amount according to weight. So you're gonna wanna weight tape your dairy goat and make sure you know her weight before administering it, because it can be toxic if you over-administer. But it's a pretty easy injection to give subcutaneously, and you give that about 1 month before their due date to ensure that the kids are healthy and strong and that both mom and baby have enough selenium reserves to tackle birth and postpartum. If you vaccinate your goats, you'll also want to mark a date to administer the CDT vaccine about 39 days before their kidding date. On our farm, we do not give this vaccine, and so it's not something I worry about anymore. But if that's something you do, that is another thing that you would be doing during pregnancy about 39 days before kidding. Now, about 1 month before kidding is when I really like to start ramping up the support for my girls as they approach their kidding dates. One of the most common issues that you can experience with dairy goats after they kid are metabolic problems. And some common symptoms of this are your goat going off feed or off grain, and a general listlessness, decreased milk production, and just losing the pep in her step. So these are some common issues, but there's some great ways that you can help support your doe leading up to birth to help prevent these problems after kidding. One of the most important ways you can do this is by starting to gradually reintroduce grain to her diet leading up to kidding. Now, when your goat kids and suddenly comes back into milk, that's a big drain on her body, and it can take its toll if she doesn't have the energy reserves to keep up with it. So one way to support her metabolism is by gradually increasing energy inputs, that would be grain, into her diet for the few weeks leading up to kidding. So about this time, I'll start introducing a small amount of grain just in the feeder when I feed all of my goats in the morning. If you have a smaller herd, or especially if you have first freshener goats that are getting ready to kid, I highly recommend getting your girls up on the stand and giving them a small amount of grain to get them used to this. Get them used to you touching and handling their udders, and get them to understand that the milk stand is a really great place for a treat. This year, all of my girls are seasoned milkers, and so I'm not worrying about this so much, and instead I'm just giving them a bit of grain when I give them their hay in the morning. I will gradually increase the amount of grain that I'm giving them leading up to their kidding, so that by the time they're coming into milk, their body is used to having grain and has the energy support that they need to keep up with the rigors of milk production. I also like to offer my goats support herbally in the last few weeks before kidding. Red raspberry leaf, just like for humans, is actually a really great way to support your does. If you have some on hand, they love it. You just give them a handful every day if you'd like. Or you can also offer a pregnancy mix or just a general wellness mix from a company like Fur Meadows or Molly's Herbals. Whatever method you use for parasite control, it's important to make sure that your goats are in a good spot leading up to kidding. Kidding and coming into milk adds a lot of natural stress on your goat's body, and that is the opportune time for parasites to really attack. So it's important to make sure that your goats are protected. We herbally deworm our goats, and so I just make sure that the girls have had their herbal wormer ahead of time, and then I make sure to do it frequently after they've kidded as well, just to make sure that they're all in a really good spot during this big change and shift for their bodies. We also like to make sure that our girls get their hooves trimmed about a month before kidding. just so that they're not super large and uncomfortable while we're trying to trim their hooves, and it's not something we have to worry about too quickly after they kid either. In the few weeks before kidding, it's a great time to start checking your goat's tail ligaments so you can get a good baseline of what they feel like before they really start to soften. And that gives you a good indication of when she's getting closer and closer to her kidding. And if you keep it up and check regularly, you'll probably be able to feel when they melt away so that you know that kidding is imminent. Keep an eye on their udders too. You'll notice that they'll start to gradually fill, and then one day they're gonna pop, and it's a really overnight sort of transformation. Not necessarily for first fresheners, they tend to have much smaller udders, but especially if this is not your goat's first kidding, you'll probably notice a pretty big change overnight on the day that she's ready to kid. You can also try bumping your goat's belly and see if you can feel babies moving. A helpful trick for remembering which side the babies are on is if you're looking the same direction as your goat, lunch is on the left and rugrats are on the right. Sometimes goats' bellies will look truly impossibly huge, especially if they have a nice deep barrel, which is a great thing in a dairy goat. Especially at the end of the day when they've been grazing all day, oh my goodness, sometimes they just look wide as a boat. And you start to wonder really how many babies are in there. It's always fun to guess and see if you were correct when they finally have those kids. Now for yourself, a few things that you should do leading up to kidding while your goats are still pregnant is to set up your kidding kit. And don't wait until the last minute. I can tell you from experience that it is very stressful to realize at the last moment in the dark while all the stores are closed that you are missing something important from your kit. So make sure you have all the things that you need before your goat's going to labor. I have one video from a few years ago where I go over the contents of my kidding kit about what I like to have in my kidding kit to be prepared for kidding season. I highly recommend knowing a vet that you could call and or having a friend or neighbor that is trusted and knowledgeable that you could call on in case of emergency. It's not something that you should expect to happen, but it's something that can happen. So I highly recommend just at least having a game plan of what you would do if an emergent situation arose. It's really helpful to read up about kidding and different possible positions that goats might need some help adjusting their babies in to have them safely born. I really love the book Holistic Goat Care by Gianna Caldwell. I think she does a really good job of showing different possible kidding positions and explaining how you would go about getting the goat into a better position to be born. Reading up and having a game plan is all fine and well, but do your best not to stress. 90% of the time kiddings go really well, and often you even walk out the door just to find babies born in between your barn checks, and that's honestly one of the best case scenarios. Just remember that this is all supposed to be a really fun and exciting season. It's hard not to stress a little bit when you know that you have goats ready to have babies really soon, but overall it's just a fun and special time, and there's so much joy on the homestead around kidding and new baby goats. I mean, what's not to love? All right, so those are a few ways I like to support my dairy goats during their gestation and leading up to kidding. While it is really simple to care for a pregnant dairy goat, and mostly you're just maintaining the high quality care that she needed prior to her pregnancy, the small and simple acts of just making sure that she has quality feed, fresh water, good quality minerals, and that you support her metabolism by gradually introducing grain and maybe even offer some herbal support are all really important factors in helping to make sure that she is off to a great start when she finally kids and comes into milk. A healthy dairy goat really does help ensure healthy babies and an abundance of milk, not to mention her own longevity and happiness for years to come. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps as I'm trying to grow my channel. I'm sharing videos weekly all about holistic dairy goat care, goat milk cheese making, and more. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.